Welcome, Dr. Kimberley.
Hello.
Hello, Doctor.
You know,
How are you?
for the last 3 days, we've been talking about how we're going to be sitting with Dr. Kimberley Johnson. So we're very pleased to have you here. Co-host Pastor Palmer is meeting you for the first time, but you'll see that you'll get to know him rather quickly. Test your mic. Just say something.
Hello.
We're not hearing her.
Harry? Hi, good morning.
All right, we're welcoming Dr. Kimberley Johnson to our table. And can I tell you, we've been coming to the Ligony Club now probably about 4. This might be our 5th week. And every Thursday morning, the breakfast crowd is bigger. I'd love to think it has something to do with
The
us.
fact that we're here?
I hope so. I am claiming it.
No,
But
no,
it's
no.
it's very good to see that we are in a very...
I'm not going to trouble you this morning. But anyway, welcome, Dr. Johnson.
Thank
How are
you
you?
for having me. I'm good. I'm very good.
That
Yeah,
I
her
can
mic is
see.
okay now?
And may
good now?
I say that we applaud the work that you are doing.
Well, let's
on
hear
the
a little
front
bit
line.
about the work that she's doing, and then we
Yes.
can applaud it. We've been applauding it still, because I've tried to describe it.
Yes.
But your most recent assignment on the front line, where have you been working?
Well, I have been working at National Chest Hospital for over 2 years,
Okay.
but over 3 years.
Ah, so
Initially, I was
just
at
before the
KP.
pandemic, and then...
Yes. Initially, I was at Kingston Public Hospital.
And you thought that was hard.
Oh boy.
And then you
That
went...
was hard, and then we
And then the pandemic came.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So how long have you been?
A doctor,
Yes.
6.5 years.
Okay, recent graduate.
Yes.
If you were married, would say you're still in the honeymoon period of being married.
Still in, but I feel like I've been a doctor for 20 years.
Oh my lord.
The pandemic
Recent
alone is
experience.
worth... The
I
last
would
2 years
say- I
worth
would
4
say
years.
Working as a doctor in the public system, and then the pandemic. The pandemic adds age to your
They
career.
don't look age also.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Thank
you
God.
don't, you don't
It's
look
internal.
Age, it ages in terms of what happens. All right. Before you speak to us about your experiences, what prompted you to become a doctor?
Well, actually, it was a backup. I actually wanted to be an architect, and the subjects that I had needed at the time, I did not have. But I had all the science subjects, so I said, okay, I'll definitely do.
I'll just settle for being a
medicine.
doctor.
But when I was young, I wanted to do medicine. And it sprung, I would say, one of the things that fueled this need to do medicine was a deficit that I saw in the emergency response system in Jamaica
Okay.
to people who, and I would say it was personal because I had lost somebody because there was a deficit in the emergency response system.
Okay.
Has that
Right.
changed any since your entry?
It has improved. Well, I wouldn't say it's because of me, but it has improved since then. I've seen a slight improvement since then.
You mind sharing that experience with the loss? Is it a family member or?
Yes, my father passed. He was a victim of a robbery,
Okay.
and it was difficult to get an emergency
To come-
medical response.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
And so he had succumbed on the scene.
Before even, yes, I had a similar experience with my brother. And actually it's coming up to the anniversary of his death because it happened on
Same.
Christmas Eve.
Same in
Wow.
early January.
Ah, okay. And I know what you mean because even bystanders were reluctant to offer any assistance, though sometimes that
Yes.
assistance is
Yes,
just,
yes.
but at least, you know,
Worse, yeah.
they were concerned about, you know, if he was going to bleed in the car. And there were some aspects to it which still hurt in terms of where we
Exactly.
are as a people in our
Yeah.
response to these situations.
And
So-
then I was just a high schooler. So, I thought maybe this could
Yeah.
be my way of trying to instill some change
Yes.
that would help somebody else. even
Well, I
though
can tell
wouldn't
you,
benefit.
just this conversation, there is someone listening who understands that the career path you choose, there is importance in how you get to it,
Yes.
because we are meant to contribute to society,
Yes,
and
yes.
something pushes us in a particular direction. And yours was a very personal experience. So
Yes.
both of us have
Yes,
some
yes.
reflection to do in a few days' time as the anniversaries roll around. But then you entered the public health system. Is that a necessity to
No,
start in that place?
No, I chose to go into the public system because I think I think the public system needed me,
Okay.
And you needed it, perhaps.
and I
also.
needed it. I think majority of the people who access the public health system needed me, because I knew what my intentions are. I knew the work attitude I would give, and I think the majority of persons who access public health system needed somebody who would give them first class dedication, that kind of care.
Service with love. So
Service
give
with
me a
love.
little bit of how that is manifested in
Tell
your
us
care.
about that,
Yeah, I
because
broke my
we-
leg and I end up in the hands of Dr. Kym. What does that mean for me?
It means you serve with passion. It means a patient who would never be able to afford healthcare that you have to pay for, healthcare, first world healthcare. They can come to a hospital with no money at all and be treated as if they're in a first world hospital.
So now I know it doesn't mean that you have a private stock of
No.
things that you bring out of the car
No.
park.
No.
But
But-
does it mean you how do you
Passion and
advocate?
care.
How
Yes,
do you
it's-
advocate? Well, I'm trying to separate the heart and, from the things that you accomplish because
Right.
you are so committed.
So
you
it
are
is-
advocating for the rights of these patients.
Of these people.
How does that play out in like a KPH? When there are no beds or the medication is not easily available, or how does that play out?
So it first starts with, one, I am self-motivated, and you try to motivate the staff members
Round
around
about
you.
right?
The nurses, the porters, the PCAs, these are the patient care assistants, you fellow doctors, you try to motivate them. Once the staff is motivated, despite the limited resources, we will try and make it work. And that's
Okay.
where it starts.
That is true because yeah.
Right. So we start with motivating the staff. And it's not just about us, it has to come from the head. The heads of departments, the heads of the hospital, or employers.
Okay.
They have to also motivate the staff. But we do this as peers because we're working with each other. We have to deal with it.
So without naming names, what's been your most bold and fearless endeavor for a patient?
Bold and fearless.
Because I hear you really saying that even if the man above me is blocking,
within
I am
2
prepared to go into his office and say, we need so and so.
Yes, because
So I just want an example because it's
reality
free flowing
is-
Thursday, so we
the reality is when a patient suffers, they will blame the doctor, the nurse, because we are who they see.
you're the face.
Right?
of-
We
yeah.
are the face of the healthcare. So it is about, as you said, advocating for the patient,
Advocacy.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So whoever it is who needs to supply us with what we need to take care of that
We have to
patient,
go up into their face.
we will go to them
So
and
I should do that still, that you go
Yes,
into
I
their
know. I'm
face.
hoping to
Because-
get a story out of her, but so
because
far
at the end of the day,
I give you more time to remember one of those
at the
stories.
end of the day, me advocating for this patient also helps you in the long run,
Okay.
right? But so if I need to go in your face and say I need more for this patient, then I need to do that,
Okay.
right? And at the end of the day, we're offering service to people
Okay.
of this country,
Okay.
right?
Your
So
brothers and sisters, your own
exactly.
family.
Could be anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And what the COVID pandemic has shown us with the fact that private hospitals could not treat or admit COVID-19 patients. They all had to be at a public hospital. It just goes to show that everybody in Jamaica, once they had COVID-19 and needed to be hospitalized, it didn't matter where they're from, they're going
They
to
were-
be in the same
They were heading
space.
to a public facility.
Right, they're going to be in the same space.
So, not to catch you off guard, but
Sure.
I'd always thought that the private hospitals could have set up wards for COVID patients, but chose not to. Are you saying that it was a requirement that the public hospitals take these patients? I mean, were private hospitals banned or blocked from running
No, I
their
don't think
own?
they're banned or blocked.
But many of them chose not to
What I
because
think is, based on just me seeing only a couple private hospitals, just by face value, I don't think they had the setup
to accommodate those patients.
right,
Okay.
what COVID-19 was. Because one, they're usually smaller hospitals. They don't have the staff, the robust staff and resources. to
And they would have been
accommodate that.
very concerned about their existing clientele. Okay,
Right.
but because the truth of it, there is some politics and regulation behind the management of public health
Right.
issues.
There's a lot of infectious guidelines which they
absolutely.
would have not had accommodated for in their
In
infrastructure.
their right, yeah, and that's an important thing for citizens to understand, that the things that may affect all of us at once are of a character that pushes us towards the public health system. So
Which
this
is why we
this
need
is
to
not a
invest
time.
more into the public
And,
health
we,
All
and
right,
therefore,
that's where
it is
that's
a
where I was gonna
yeah.
ask, in
It
terms
makes
of-
it a priority to
Yes.
increase the investment. This is not when you can get your private plane and fly out.
Right, right.
This is when you have to use what is at home. We're
Right,
we're
well-
big on encouraging greater social
Yes, and
investment in
surprisingly, or how fortunate, yesterday I had I was invited to the Ministry of Health and Wellness's open house where they were showing their plans for rehabilitation of public health facilities, so upgrading of type C, which are the lower hospitals, to
the procedure now.
right, to higher service hospitals. And I was
You're
so
blown away?
impressed. I was so impressed, and I said to the minister himself, I said, if this is done, I will shake your hand.
Okay.
I'll
not
be
bump
so
elbows,
proud.
but
I'll
shake his
bump
hand.
elbows. I will be so proud because one thing, as I said earlier to Mrs. Lawrence, I'm so passionate about public health care for people of Jamaica, especially those who would have never had access to health care that they would have to pay for.
Yes.
Just one thing, just a follow. So they showed you pictorial what they wanted to do. What was
Yes,
the
they
price
showed.
tag?
Well, they didn't mention that, but we saw the different hospitals that they're planning to upgrade: Maypen Hospital, St. Anne's Bay, Spanish Town, etc. And the plans.
Any new hospitals and clinics to give
Supposed to
greater
build a child
coverage?
one in the west, I think.
I
that
never
has been-
saw the new ones because I got there a little late. I never saw the new ones.
Anything for Portmore?
I saw the new Spanish Town. I saw
Okay.
the new Portmore Health Centers,
Health
which
centers.
looks like a
Yeah.
hospital. They're it's pretty impressive. The designs and the plans that were shown. So this is the start of that investment in public health. And I think the pandemic, while it was unfortunate, it has been an unfortunate time for many. It has forced us out of that box, that unfortunate comfort zone that we've stayed in public health for a long time.
Well, we many of us have said in a more spiritual vein that the pandemic represented an opportunity for a reset,
Reset.
a leveling of the playing field, so to
Yes,
speak.
yes, yes.
Because when the virus claimed you, it didn't matter if you were rich, poor, black, white, and as you've said, you were heading all to the same place. Have you seen? Well, that might be. In your experience, now specifically at the chest hospital, what was your experience there as you saw the different streams of, or they said to Jamaica, but as you saw Jamaica in her many faces coming through the doors, what was that experience like?
That was probably one of the most interesting times in the public health system. For one, you saw a mix of, as you said, people from different walks of life on the same ward. And it was an amazing sight. Some things that you would have expected, you did not see.
Such as?
Because we are all people. That's
You
what
know,
it is.
and I always say they all united in one fight to stay alive.
Okay.
They became friends, they supported each other. People who otherwise would have never met or crossed paths. They all supported each other. You saw some sides of people that persons outside of the hospital would have
never see.
experienced. And you were able to see people, the mightiest of persons in society, at their lowest, and they were so humble. They were so humbled by the experience, and it was
I
amazing.
can understand that as a pastor. Because you probably never heard that thing. When you do funerals, I do weddings and funerals,
Yes.
and I tell people, I'm not being morbid, but I prefer to
No,
do
I just remembering that you have one at 9 o'clock or whatever. What time are you leaving?
At 9:30.
9:30.
I was just thinking,
He's leaving early today.
you at that point in their life, they're very vulnerable.
Yes.
They're very vulnerable and open. And I'm saying it provides the greatest opportunity to speak to them. And I think that is what you've been saying. That
Yes.
it just levels everything.
Yes, yes, yes,
When
yes.
you're going, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, but let me ensure that what I'm
Right.
doing counts for
Right.
something. You can continue.
You
So
know?
did you, I mean, could you say then that you saw people come in one way and leave changed? And I don't
Yes.
mean those who died.
No. Yes. Persons, yes, for sure. There are many persons who came in. One, they came in with a lot of fear, and they came out more motivated, more confident. They came in a little, I would say, arrogant, and they left
Humble.
beautiful, humble persons, and it's amazing. It's really something to see, and I would have loved. It shows an integration of Jamaica,
Wow.
you know, and it would have been nice if persons outside of the hospital could have seen
Could see
this
it.
kind of community. But you know, we're only privy to that. But
Yeah,
it's
right.
a lovely sight.
You're sharing it through this medium is a good enough window, and that's why I'm trying to probe into it, because we have many callers. We might not interact with our callers today, but we have callers who speak with such despair and who are so burdened by the violence and what it means for our people. Most of us understand that you can lose your temper and do something rash, but you're not losing your temper every day. But when you see the numbers, in terms of the murders and the
1,500 and
incidents of violence, you realize that somewhere in Jamaica, somebody, every 5 minutes, every whatever, something is happening. So to know that through suffering of the body, we can come to that place of oneness.
Yes.
It's good for listeners to hear that it's not, it's not hopeless.
All doom
It's
and
not,
gloom and
yeah.
hopeless.
There's purpose in the suffering.
There
you know?
is.
There's a lot. I, as somebody who's been work with young people a lot, I give them this scenario. Today is the 8th of
The 9th.
of December. So on the 16th of December, we're gonna be at your funeral. You have all the money in the world. You can do anything you want to do. What are the things that you do? Tell me your top 3 priorities.
Money is no.
Money is no hindrance to what you can do. And I throw it out. And it is interesting what their responses are.
Well, let's hear her response.
Yeah, what would be your
She's
response?
young
Yeah,
enough to
yes.
ponder
Okay,
it.
let's go again. So,
So the
3 things.
So today on the 9th day of December, I'm saying to you, Dr. Kym, next week, Thursday, we're gonna be at your funeral.
Okay.
Money is not a problem. You can do anything you want. What will be your top 3 priorities as an individual?
Okay. One of the first things I would do is provide shelter for so many people I've interacted with. These are people who are known to me and who I've just interacted with, whether as patients or as passerby. I'm an empath by nature. So if I drive out of here today and I see a man on the road just lying in the sun, I might cry.
Okay.
I might cry. So things like that hurt me. As a doctor, when I see a patient and I say, okay, you need to go home and you need to ensure that you're eating this before you take that. Doc, I don't have any food. Okay, who is at home with you? I don't know where I'm going. That hurts because what am I doing for the patient? What more can I do? Yes, I'm trying to treat them, but that's not it. So a lot of people are homeless. As simple as it seems, they might be nicely dressed, they're homeless. And as a doctor, you're privy to this kind of information. And you realize there's so much you can do and know more. That's the first thing I'd do.
So before you leave that point, I want to suggest something. I'm a bit like you. I'm a bit like you. So for those persons, does the hospital encourage or get into a network of the places and the persons who offer that kind of support? Because I heard the minister, and I want to speak to you about that. The minister has complained about the many persons who have been abandoned at the hospital and are occupying beds, and he's worried about the beds. And really, he's even talked about suing the persons who ought to be taking care of them. But in a civil society, there are many moving parts, and not all of them are paid for what they do. And it is what builds the sense of community, that there are voluntary organizations that participate in carrying some of the social cost that an ailing society
Yeah,
has
social
to bear.
workers that work
Right, that's what I was about
So
to say.
do you have, so when you have a person who says, Doc, I don't have food, what
Yes.
are you able to
Yes,
do?
so
and
we have
and for
a-
the benefit of young doctors who need to
Definitely,
know
'cause I
that
think
these resources
quite a few
exist.
don't know that resources exist.
So let's share this
So we
morning.
have social workers and social services, patient affairs. So you contact the social workers, and I will tell you this, just from National Chest Hospital's perspective, the social worker there, she does a lot.
She covers the ground.
Oh man, she will get the churches involved. She will ensure that the patients are taken care of.
Okay.
So the social workers, they do a lot of work. Hats off to them, and I think they need more resources
And support.
They need more
So
support.
is there like a ratio that works? Because there are some places where there's every patient, so there needs to be like one social worker for every 50 patients that leave, or 30 patients, or is it just at large? You have one social worker and
That's the thing.
it's everybody.
Need more social workers.
We need more social
Yeah.
workers, and these are some of the fields that younger persons are not aware
They're
of,
not
maybe,
aware of
or
it.
they're
Yes.
not interested in going
Yeah,
into. But we need
and some
more
of it
them.
might be starter areas for persons who are in
Yes,
training
they
that
are,
you
exactly.
can.
So we need more of them because they're so important. We need more social workers. We need more psychologists in the hospitals. Those
Because
are two
mental
main
health
areas.
is a
mental
big
health, especially
issue.
with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's one.
That's
So
one
that
thing.
was one.
The second thing that
Shelter.
I would shelter. Too many people are homeless and we don't know. The second thing I would spend on, it will sound selfish, I'd spend on expanding my career.
Okay.
Because
Even though you have 1 week to live. That's the important thing. You have
yes,
1
I
week.
would. I would.
You want to go back
because
to God with our brain chock full of everything
I
that
would.
you
Do
need to know.
You know why? Because when I said career, it's not just medicine. Because if you know me, it's not just
It's
medicine.
the experience of the disciplines.
Other disciplines.
What's top of the list?
Become an architect. She gave up that.
No,
You're
I
artistic,
gave
you're
up that
artistic
one.
that way.
Recently, I started to go into skincare
Okay.
and teaching people how to get their skin to the healthiest point.
Well, we can tell the
And
listeners that
there
she's practicing
there
what
are
she
some
preached.
one-day courses I would want to do, and those
Just
are
to know
expensive
something.
just to do, and I want to do those.
Okay,
It's the
alright.
last thing I could do, and they're one.
SFM, rocking. Yeah, man.
So,
Keep it locked,
second
keep it
one.
locked, keep it locked.
The third thing,
SFM, rocking. Yeah, man. Keep it locked, keep it
new
locked.
person, and tell them I love them and apologize
Okay.
for some things.
The money would be a nice addition.
Yeah, I'll just give them some
Yeah,
money because
that's it, sorry.
money solves so much of everybody's
Absolutely.
problems.
That's
And
it,
you know
money
what?
answers a lot
When
of
they're at your
problems.
funeral,
Look here, Miss Ono no play no
they would
no
say,
mess up, mess
you know,
no play
when
no.
she apologized to me, she said,
Miss
here.
FM.
And I was able to buy the car that you see outside.
Hey!
And to
Just
think
saying.
about it, money would solve those people's problems
yeah,
as
money
well.
does- yeah, it does.
But you know, and sometimes the little knowing that you're not going to be here next week is the nudge that says you
That's-
need to go and do
yes.
this now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You need to go and
You
do
know,
this
there's
now.
I'm gonna say there's a service. I know it's in an Asian company. They sell funerals, a living funeral, where they
Oh.
organize it for you, so all your people can come and they
Can say
do
what they need to say before
say
you
what they
die.
need to say. Because right now, during pandemic time, it has taken off, boom in it, because they've found that it satisfies a need for emotional comfort and that
It does.
yeah, you could do that business.
That is-
And here's a pastor who will preach at the funeral for you.
But that is a very interesting
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. Hey,
It
don't
is,
knock
it
those
is.
Asians, you know. They have some
They're
wisdom there.
smart.
They're smart.
Yeah, they do it.
Yeah.
You know, they have
So
some
there's
stuff.
they just plan your funeral and you're there and you hear what everybody wants to say,
Yes.
and
So what
yeah,
used to
I
stop
see
you
it
from doing those
resonates well
things?
with her. The money part.
The third one I could do, you know. The third one I might
Yeah.
do it when I leave here.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
You've
So it's like it's a
inspired
short
me.
list.
It's a short list. You've inspired me, but it's an important list.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd love to know what's on Pastor's list since he's been tossing that question out now for how many years?
Many years.
Many years. What's on your list?
In terms of what I need to do, like you, I'm about helping people, facilitating people to greatness, to what God has inspired them to do. So that's what I'd spend the money to do, because money...
More of the same.
More of the same of what I'm doing.
Okay.
Right relationships with people, you don't hold any debt. And of course, in terms of myself and God, to continue to grow, because one of the things, we did a survey I did over many years. The first thing that young people said, they make their relationship right with God. That's what they said. That's the first thing. Because many of them were not.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The second
So it's a
thing-
question of what you're lacking or
Yeah,
what
right.
you think you're lacking.
Yeah. The second thing in terms of relationships, ensure that there's nobody who can say I've ought against or they've hurt me. Just moving into forgiveness, ensuring that all the relationships. And the third thing was do as much good as I could with all the money that I can. So I
Yes.
said to them, well, the truth is, you're not going to tomorrow is not promised to you anyway, so
Exactly.
do it today.
Exactly.
So the thing is, do what you can today, because you don't know if you're going to live tomorrow.
So that question, that's the world peace question. You know, in beauty contest they ask about a question and the answer is to bring
World peace.
That's Pastor's world peace question that he asked. But I want to shift focus on you a little bit. Earlier you mentioned how whilst in that condition of need and illness in the COVID ward, persons seem to find a common level. I know that sickness is one of the things that can strip away your dignity. My mother is beyond 70, and I've seen her need assistance for some things which she once took great pride doing on her own. The question of human rights, fundamental rights and freedoms, and the recognition that ownership of your body and the privacy that goes with it are important fundamental rights. How do you, in the hospital environment, seek to remain connected with that, the honoring and the observance of people's rights? And please don't restrict it to just your personal experience. Share with me what you observe and maybe even what we could all do better.
To answer this question, it's all about listening. I think what we do as healthcare workers, even as relatives of patients, we don't listen to what the patient wants.
Okay.
We tend to throw at them, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And it's the patient, unless the patient is unable to mentally, they're not of sound
Participate
mind,
in-
they can't reason or
Yeah.
so. Listen. Especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, they're so alone because they don't get visitors because they're isolated. They're very alone. They're very vulnerable. And in our public hospitals, you're on a ward where you're not in your own room. You're in the presence of everyone, right? That is different for most persons. So you listen. Sometimes you just stop. You say, how are you today?
And you mean it.
And you mean it, and you just stop and listen. Sometimes they'll talk for hours.
I know.
time.
But let me make something, because as a pastor, you work dealing with so many different persons. But I says, how are you? And the expectation is pastor just ask. But I ask the question, how are you? And the fact that I'm stopping to listen to what they're saying, it means a world of a
It does.
difference to the people.
It does, and they know when you really mean
are
it.
interested. So
They
you're
know.
not asking the question.
Exactly.
Oh, you're not asking and writing. How are you today?
Exactly.
No. You are really listening to what they're saying.
Just listen.
Because what it is you're being authentic with them, but you're also affirming who they are as a person.
Exactly.
Okay.
So does hospital procedures involve anything that allows you to, that protects persons, whatever little dignity you have left?
Yes, there is.
Give me an idea.
So for one, we do not share. If the patient says, this is the only person you can share
My
information with, that's the only person we share it with.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if this is the wife and the husband says do not share, we do not share.
Are
We
you
have to
serious?
respect that. Yes,
Okay.
because once the patient is of sound mind, and they said, I do not. It's a,
Privacy, it's the law. It's actually
right?
the confidentiality of doctor-client
Right.
information.
And
So
as
there's
I
that.
said, sometimes they're patients, they're ill, they're overwhelmed. And as even relatives are, because they're also overwhelmed and going through it emotionally as well. But sometimes they have to take a step back and say, I need to know, respect what my loved one is going through, respect their time, what they want to feel, how they're grieving, and allow them. And those are some of the ways we can give rights and
Dignity.
to
What about the
patients.
right to die? Do you believe there's such a right to die in your manner of choosing? I mean, not talking about suicide now.
Not
We're talking about
suicide.
terminally ill persons and so on. What conversations exist around that for you?
I do, because as I said, I'm an empath.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I want to do everything for the patient. But as I said, patients, they get to choose how they want to spend their last days. At the end of the day, our duty as doctors is to accommodate or to make the patient as comfortable as possible. Right. And we do no harm, as you said. Our laws don't allow for, right. So we don't do that. However, we explain.
So I know Pastor muttered something. Did he say euthanasia?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
So we don't do that.
Pastor Mutta just
I
let her know
said-
that you heard it.
We don't do that. But for patients who are terminally ill, one, we have a psychologist we let them speak to, right? Which is usually very good for them.
Well, what
Even
direction
as-
do you think we ought to go as being as empathetic as you are? What's the direction you think we should
Sometimes
go in?
all it takes is to just sit and let the patient talk, right? And they will tell you exactly how they feel. And sometimes even if, okay, they say, I want to die, just sitting down and talking and let them pour their heart out.
Well, I've said I want to die sometime.
Right. All it takes,
Because
I
you were in
wasn't even in,
despair.
I wasn't even in hospital.
all it takes is for to allow them to pour their hearts
So,
out and
yeah.
talk and
Yeah.
listen, and maybe they will not feel this way, because it's when the fear and the hopelessness and the despair overcomes them and they give up.
They use the words that they have.
Use those
and-
words.
and
Sometimes
that's
they don't
what-
really mean it.
They
They
don't.
just use
Absolutely.
those words. Right.
In some places, there is a growing recognition that the spiritual well-being of a patient is a great motivator for healing, and that there, I mean, you know, one of
In our
my
profession
friends
as
said
well,
there,
yeah.
in some countries, they are teaching about God and religion and worship as a part of the healing process. What's your take on that? And
So for
do
me,
you yourself apply any of those principles?
especially with COVID, because I said it's a lonely
Please.
disease, because as I said, you're isolated. For most of the patients, they start to give up, especially if they're in the hospital and the person next to them dies or passes.
They think
They
it's
start
contagious.
they start to question their own mortality, because I have the same illness. Will I succumb like they did? And by the next morning, they're anxious and they're nervous and they start to give up, even when they're doing so well. And I would say to them, do you believe in a God? What do you believe in? Because I can't impose
Your
my
own,
religious beliefs on anybody. What do you believe in? What makes you feel motivated? And you say, hold on to that.
Okay.
Hold on to that. Right?
All right, it's time for our 9 o'clock break, so I won't tease you on that point until we come back.
Okay.
All right, please stay with us. We're talking to Dr. Kimberley Johnson, and it's quite interesting, so please stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Connection. Your hosts, Minette and Percival, and we're speaking to Dr. Kimberley Johnson. Of course, we're at the Ligony Club. The breakfast trade is lively, so if you plan to drop by, I would suggest you do so before the ackee and sawfish finish. It always finished by 9:30. I'm beginning to take note. But I had just asked Kimberley to share with us her views on this business of incorporating spirituality into the healing process.
Right. So as healthcare workers, we try not to impose our beliefs on patients. However, as I said, my approach is always whatever it is you believe in, whatever God you believe in, whatever it is that motivates you to get up
In the fight for life.
in the fight for life, hold on to it.
Yeah, sometimes it's love of family and
Whatever
and
it is,
then love
hold
comes
on to
from
it.
God. So
Right,
you,
right.
yeah. How does that work? I mean, are you see
It
it,
works,
you see
and-
people responding.
Listen, when COVID is there's a lot of emotional, mental anguish that comes with COVID-19 because patients are alone and vulnerable, as you see. And the fear, I always say, if you allow, I say to the patients, if you invite the fear of COVID to overcome you, it will take you over. You have to fight. And my patients always say, Dr. Johnson told me to fight. You
And
know?
you are a fighter, and you are a fighter too.
I am a fighter. I've been through enough in my life. I could write 2 big books.
Oh, you need to do it.
And
I encourage you to do that.
I tell them, you need to fight, you know? And they hug me in the hazmat suit and I'm telling them, you need to fight. You need to fight because I need to see you come out of here. You know? And that is what gets them.
Oh, wow.
So a big part of a little bit about us, because I know you've only met us in this limited situation here. So we've been talking for weeks, months. We've been talking about the ways to stay out of the hospital, the things you can do at home in your communities to keep you out of the hospital. What are the things that when you say to when the patient is going home, are you telling them, because one can be reinfected, and
Yes, they can.
you're telling them keep out of trouble. What are the
Right.
things that you would
So-
recommend?
For the patients who are leaving the hospital, one, they have follow-ups. Well, at National Chest Hospital, they're followed up 2 weeks immediately and follow up based on how they're doing that at that 2 weeks. But one, we tell them they're not leaving the hospital if they're still symptomatic. So when they're leaving, they're not coughing.
They've
they're
had
not
a
able
they've
to
had a
spread
negative
anything.
test
Right.
result.
They're not able to spread anything. But when they're leaving or when after they've done their follow-up, we tell them to look out for warning signs of long COVID. And these are the further effects of the virus even after you've recovered, right? That can affect your lung, the heart, the kidneys, and so on. What we also encourage is at the appropriate time, which is 3 months after you've recovered, is to be vaccinated. And this is to give you that extra protection. As Mrs. Lawrence said, you can be reinfected with COVID-19. The vaccination is just to ensure that
Give
if
you a
you
little
get
edge.
the virus, you don't end up in hospital again, right? So it's not that you can't get the virus again. It's just that the severity of the disease process or the illness will not be as bad. For patients who are not in hospital, we tell them quarantine if you have COVID-19, or if you have symptoms suggestive of you're coughing, you have a fever, you feel malaise, that's tired, or so on. Quarantine or seek medical assistance. Get a swab, get a test, right? Wear your mask. If you're around person, say, hey, I don't feel so hot. Let me stay away. Don't be
So how do you
incorporating.
feel about they're traditional now. Those are the conservative, formal medical approaches. But we're in a country where I'm going to say bush tea at the risk of offending one of my listeners who say bush is to be binned, burnt, and carted away. Anyway, but herbal, the teas and the inhalants or the steaming of the
Right.
the different things. Right. What any advice, any recommendation?
Right. The steaming, white is good with eucalyptus oil is because one of the symptoms of COVID-19, some persons will only get that is the sinus draining or they have nasal congestion, and they think it's just a sinusitis, so they don't think it's COVID-19. And so, COVID or not, if you have nasal congestion, steaming with especially eucalyptus oil helps to clear the sinuses or the congestion. So that helps.
Just a good practice.
It's a good practice. The teas, plants, they were put on this earth and they all have value. The issue is that sometimes we don't know exactly how much we need and in what quantity, and so too much of anything might not be good.
So be informed then.
To be informed, understand? Some of the herbal things that we know are good and could be useful are turmeric, because turmeric is known to be an anti-inflammatory, right, could be incorporated as herbal. However, we don't, unless you know how much, in what quantity, how often, be informed by somebody, an expert.
Let me ask you, as a fairly young doctor, are you averse to the incorporation of these folklore medicine therapies as a part of a treatment protocol?
I'm not averse. If I were more informed or
Okay.
knew more about, I'm not averse, because medicine is a holistic, you have to be holistic in management of patients.
Okay.
And we come back to respecting people's rights, beliefs. If people don't believe what you're giving them or how you're treating them, they will not comply.
But
You have to
listen,
find ways to incorporate people's beliefs.
I applaud you for the sincerity of your response, because many persons say no to the things they don't understand.
If I understood.
Yes, and
You have to understand
and you
before
have
you can
to
accept
have the
or
humility
deny. Right.
to yes.
Right.
That's a position
yeah.
of humility.
Yeah, that's
That is-
I caught
we
it.
applaud you.
I
Thank
caught
you.
it. I caught
because,
it.
because a lot of people, in some countries, we are not able to afford vaccine at all region. What has happened is that they've been using
Is he too far from the microphone?
that, but they've
good.
been using what it is that they know, and they've been using it. In some countries, reports are coming out that that's what they've been using, and their infection rates are down, their deaths are down. So that's important. So you are saying that an important part. If they don't believe, then they're not going to be compliant. So you could
Exactly.
force people as much as you want if they don't believe it.
And compliance is a big issue with healthcare, not just in Jamaica, everywhere.
Okay, all right. So what you're saying is that incorporation in terms of a holistic way of treating people, in terms
Which
of
is why we need to do more studies, more research, especially locally, into COVID-19, because it's so novel and new to us. We need to do more research outside of just the medications and so on. We need to do more research locally, because our population is very resilient, we're very stubborn, we stand firm in our beliefs, so we need to research more than just drugs, vaccine and everything. Get more information on how else can we accommodate people more holistically in the management of COVID-19.
And of health generally,
And
I would
health
suppose.
generally.
So in the area of pharmacology now, I'm gonna shift on you, and because we are a country that consumes, and more so than produce, medical treatments, therapies, drugs. In having worked in the public sector, what do you think about Jamaica's readiness to or need to become now more involved in producing some of what we require locally in the healthcare sector?
Drugs are expensive.
the research is expensive to do.
And the research is expensive. And as I said, because we're not a country that's research driven, we won't get the funding that is needed for research. If we start promoting research, then the funding will come. We need to do a lot more.
Do you have an interest in any of those areas yourself?
No.
Okay, so
I'm not.
it's not part of the career expansion.
No. I'm more of the clinical aspect.
Okay.
I'm more of the
Okay.
clinical
Okay.
aspect.
Yeah.
But I think we need to do more in terms of pharmacology, because we have the talent. We have the talent, and what happens? The talent leaves Jamaica to go elsewhere because we don't have the resources.
That's why I've asked you, because I
So-
think you would have seen
Right.
firsthand and how many things we don't have, can't get, have to find
And I
substitutes
must
for.
say, the Ministry of Health has done such a good job. You know, persons may not see it, but they've done such a good job in sourcing drugs for the patients with COVID-19 in the hospital. And sometimes when you look at the figures for these drugs, you wonder, wow, how are we affording this? You know, so if it is that we can invest more in our in pharmacology and research and producing, you
And
know.
preventative care. We
And
haven't talked
preventative
a lot about immune boosting, nutrition, and that side of healthcare.
Right. Because with especially for vaccine hesitant persons, again, unless it is mandatory, you have to meet people where they are, right? And you have to help people know to say, okay, if you are not going to be vaccinated, how else can I help you to protect yourself?
Okay.
And it comes back to, outside of sanitizing, wearing your mask, social distancing, boosting your immune system.
Well, all
But
right.
do you believe, as a medical practitioner, that an important part of healing is for that?
Of course.
I'm asking it because normally the thing is
You've
you
met
get
a doctor
sick.
who didn't?
Yeah.
Oh,
What they
no,
want to
that's
do
a
is give you-
story.
No, man.
There are some
It is a
people-
big part, and there are quite a few doctors who a lot of doctors would encourage, because especially with the chronic illnesses,
Right.
we encourage dietary changes that will help in the management of your chronic illness, diabetes, hypertension,
Yeah.
right? And that's the holistic management. I, for sure, when I was working at KPH, I was a part of the endocrinology service. They see a lot of diabetic patients, and my consultant, she is big on telling them,
Nutrition.
this is the diet I want you to employ, to help to manage the diabetes.
Have you done any work in the prisons? You've not had?
No, I have not. But I'm good friends with Dr. Paul, who is in charge of the doctor.
All
in
right. The
charge
reason I asked is because this is kind of in the area of human rights. The prisoner's health is the responsibility of the correctional department, and nutrition is a big part of maintaining health. And I guess they come into the hospital occasionally. Have you had to treat prisoners who have come in?
yes, we've had to.
And the general health, the baseline health condition, how have you found it?
Well, at National Chest Hospital, I've never seen any inmates that I've had concerns with their nutritional status. I've never seen any personally at Chest Hospital.
But at
I
KPH?
can't speak. Well, I was there for a year.
Oh,
During that
okay.
time, I never, but at Chest Hospital, there, and majority, the thing is, if you see an inmate there that is of a nutritional status that's concerning, it's not because of how they're fed, it's the illness, right? The illness is the most likely contributing factor,
Okay.
right?
All right.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. They're really being impressed with your understanding of who you are, what it is you're called to do. So what happens now? You're working at Chess. Do you want to do post studies in terms of being a consultant in whatever area?
I'm in the process of doing so, preparing to do so.
So what area of interest do you have?
Internal medicine. So internal medicine, possibly I'll go into pulmonology, which is what I'm doing
You're
that
currently
now
doing.
at National Chest Hospital. But to be the specialist, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll stop medicine altogether.
What you saying?
Maybe I'll stop medicine altogether.
You are such a breath of fresh air in terms of how you see it and what you bring to the table and the passion that drives it. So you go into skincare or something like that, or so being an entrepreneur or whatever.
Or just be a mother, maybe.
Just be a mother. Well, she never told us that was on the horizon.
That's another goal of mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And although she said just, that is kind of like the ultimate
It is the ultimate job.
Right.
It is
just
the
being a
ultimate
mom.
job.
Yeah.
That is the end goal, really.
And
So he's caught you and he's had your heart and he's moving towards that.
We hope.
You will. She said she hope.
We hope.
I tell you, Pastor specializes in weddings and funerals, so pick your spot.
Let's hope I can call Pastor in the near future.
Yes. So
One more on the card.
Yeah.
But on that score, we talk about integrity a lot here, meaning, of course, that the whole person, there's no fracturing of the personality or the capabilities into I'm a good doctor but I'm a terrible mom. So I've been listening to you and just considering the impact you can have generally just by reason of your philosophy and how you see the world. So now, as you think about parenting and partnering and doctoring, and because we are always the balancing of the many hats, what is your perspective on it? It sounds like you figure you need to put something down in order to
Yes.
take something up.
Yes.
Explain.
I've had this discussion quite a few times with other doctors, especially other female doctors. And it is a tricky situation for women in the medical field as opposed to men, because when deciding on a medical career as a woman, you have to think about, do you want a family? What kind of family do you want? How big of a family do you want? What kind of mother do you want to be? And then you think about, what kind of doctor do you want to be? What kind of career do you want to be? Where do you want to have this career? Medicine is demanding.
Yes.
If you decide to go to certain levels or go into certain specialties as a doctor, it becomes even more demanding. For me, I think one of the most important goals, as I was saying, for me, and that's personal, is to be a good mother.
Okay.
I'm a passionate doctor. Can I go full force and be a passionate doctor and be an excellent mother, be the mother that I want to be, that I set myself out to be? I don't think so. Or should I say, I don't think I can balance working in a hospital setting and being the mother that I've set out to be, that I want to be.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that it is inevitable that the demands of the job be so overwhelming that they would challenge your need as a mother? Is it inevitable?
It is not. The challenge that we're having is that the hospitals, or the being in the hospital system as it is now, it takes a lot out of you.
But the system can change.
The system can change.
The system will change.
It will change.
With more women and more mothers.
Because guess what? medical school is putting out more women, and we're putting out more women.
Yeah.
That's the
When you get into the administrative side of
the system
things,
will start to accommodate. I believe it will start to accommodate for this. So, if you're at a hospital where there's a shortage of staff, then it makes it hard for you to spend that time at home. If you're a mother, things like maternity leave, you don't get enough time. Then again,
how bad is the shortage of staff? Because here's why I'm switching gears on you.
There's not a shortage of staff right now. You know, there has been a tremendous improvement, and I'm very grateful for that.
COVID, they saw the need and had to respond.
I love that. This is why I said, out of this unfortunate situation of COVID, so much good came out of it.
Yeah, and there's more to come.
There's more to come.
So here's why I was shifting you a little bit. Without gender bashing, we are aware that the traditions in many disciplines, many careers were male focused and dominated. And so standards were set because there's a wife at home, the doctor could be there all night. With those, and so there was one permission for it to be that way, but also, and I'm not, gender bashing as I said, but it seemed to flow that way because they were planning based on their availability and their priorities. So now that there is a shift, there's a shift in the field force, if you will. Is there a similar shift at the administrative planning levels, which is where you now begin to allocate resources and you begin to look at schedules and you begin to throttle back on some of the things that create the imbalance in society? The shift is taking place.
Because, and again, I will speak about National Chest Hospital. One would say it's a female-dominated hospital.
Oh. A lot of females.
Because it continues to shine in terms of its performance.
The pulmonology team is all female doctors. All the doctors are female, or SMO or senior medical officer is a female, or consultants are females.
Are the males up there at all?
Patients.
The males are
patients.
They're the surgical team. And it's very few.
I don't have a problem with being patient because they're going to take good care of everybody.
And our previous CEO was a female.
Yeah.
So right now we have a male CEO. He's the only. And we have a male administrator. They're the only males.
Well, that's good.
But
it's mainly female.
And
I see the light in your eyes.
No, well, I'm interested in it because you know how I track these issues, and I know that the culture will change when the priorities and the focus shift, and sometimes it really is it's some of these things are gender based, like it or not.
I'm not saying no, I'm just
Yeah,
listening to
you
where
were
you're going.
you were looking
It's
horrified.
lovely because having women as leaders in the hospital and so on, they're
Changes
more
what happened.
they're more
They're more
accommodating.
empathetic.
Yeah, I will say my SMO. It's lovely to have a female SMO. She understands the struggles of women. She's more accommodating to things that
Say,
women.
and then we'll get it done together as a team.
Exactly. And women, I don't know, women have a certain resilience.
It's something that God has given to you in your genes.
Yes.
I know it is.
I missed something that
No,
you.
the empathetic nature
Oh,
of his.
in our genes. I
Yes,
thought
in
you
our-
said dreams. So
No,
I'm
no,
like,
no, no,
okay,
genes.
Pastor has shifted now and left me behind.
But I wanted to say to you, when you're raised with between an excellent mom and a good doctor, what if your partner facilitates that in terms of you achieving that? Because
And that is
chief
very
servant.
important. I left that out. A good support system.
right,
If you have a good support system, it is possible.
yeah, because I
Well,
have friends who
once you
like
told me that you did not regard it as inevitable that this demand
Yeah.
continue,
Yeah.
I knew you'd
But
figure
if
it
you have a
out.
good support system in a
Yeah.
hospital and at home, it can work.
Yeah,
It will work.
it's not
It
an
does work.
untouchable.
It does work.
Women, men have been getting the
People
best
have
of
done it
several
before.
worlds,
Right.
absolutely, without damaging
Maybe
the
I
family.
just want to stop now. I just
And
feel-
enjoy it because
Maybe I'm just fishing for
No.
excuses.
I give you permission. You have permission.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong
You
with
have
that.
permission.
You can take and then come back.
Yeah,
Because it's a
or not
I
come
agree.
back as you
I
see
agree.
fit, because
Exactly.
all the skills that we develop in our lifetime, we take them into the next adventure,
Exactly.
and the world is better for it. Thank you so
Exactly.
much, Kimberley.
And I thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And the seasons.
Yeah.
You are in
There are
different seasons
seasons.
of your
Yeah.
life.
Right.
You
There
need
are
to
seasons.
understand when that season's finished to move into the next one. A lot of times what happened to us as individuals, God has said this season finished, and we hold on, and then the blessing that comes with being in that season.
In the new season,
Yeah.
you're
still-
denied it.
No, you're
Oh.
right. You,
Oh,
you
you-
stay in the
okay.
old season when God says, all right, shift gears, be moving into something, there's more great growth ahead of you. But I think I've just loved it, and in the break I've discovered other things that
Yeah, and it's
I'm
time for
really
you to go.
impressed. And it's
So
time for
say
me
your
to-
goodbyes.
It's so nice.
Sound
to
like
have
I'm
met
throwing
you.
out pasta.
Nice.